Imagine this. You finally get to your lunch break after a long day of classes, and you decide to buy your favorite ice cream as a treat. The anticipation is agonizing. You can practically picture biting into the cool, soft vanilla ice cream covered in a smooth, rich, chocolatey shell. Your mouth is watering, and you can practically taste it. You arrive at the cafeteria, money in hand, only to realize with shocking disappointment that they've been banned from sale at school. Lawmakers and school administrators all across America have been debating just this in response to the growing issue of childhood obesity. My name is Zara.
And I'm Kiana, and today we will be supporting banning the sale of junk food in schools.
I'm Alyssa.
And I'm Katie, and today we will be expressing the opposing view of this ban.
We've done our own research on this topic and have also drawn on our personal experiences as students and have come to our own informed conclusions on this highly debated issue. The debate of whether or not to ban junk food in schools nationwide is important, as the decision will affect not only future generations, but it will also have repercussions or benefits for our current society as a whole. The main arguments we'll be presenting today are that obesity is a growing epidemic and practical measures need to be taken to prevent this. Prohibiting the sale of junk food is also an effective way of tackling obesity and promoting both short-term and long-term healthy choices for children. Moreover, schools are learning institutions, and as a result, they're held accountable for students under their daily care. Because of this, they're pretty much responsible for making decisions that are best for them, and that also includes those that pertain to their general well-being. Kiana is going to tell you a little bit about our stance on this issue.
Thanks, Sarah. So our first main point about obesity is not anything new. Obesity is a classified epidemic. By preventing schools from selling junk food, we are making a practical decision to improve the health of as many students as possible. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, there were about 98,000 public schools in the United States as of 2011 and 2012. Likewise, according to the Council for American Private Education, there are 30,861 private schools in the country, which together serve more than 5.3 million students. A junk food ban placed in schools will affect millions of students and can make a dramatic impact on the state of obesity in America. According to the American Journal of Public Health, nearly 300,000 people die annually due to complications related to obesity, and we need to do what we can to promote good nutrition. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition Education and Behavior a few months ago researched the association between school vending machines and children's body mass index by socioeconomic status. Their findings state that the school food environment could reinforce health disparities that exist for low-income children. The American Academy of Pediatrics also states that obesity has led to a dramatic increase in the incidence of type 2 diabetes among children and adolescents over the past 2 decades. Another study published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine supports the notion that the public health should deem the obesity crisis an essential and important task. The study states that due to the increased prevalence and costs associated with obesity, obesity prevention efforts must be a public health priority. A junk food ban placed in school exhibits the importance that educational institutions are placing on public health.
All right, thank you very much, Kiana, for your input. I see what you're saying about how obesity is a growing epidemic among youth in America, but I think it's impractical to limit everyone's ability to eat junk food just because a small percentage of adolescents' health are adversely affected. So according to the Centers for Disease Control via cdc.gov, only about 20% of adolescents in America are obese. That being said, I think it's unfair to take away junk food from the other 80% of kids who have a higher metabolism and are fine eating junk food in moderation. In regard to what you said about the diabetes problem, although the prevalence of type 2 diabetes is on the rise, I can agree with you there. According to diabetesjournals.org, type 1 diabetes still accounts for more than half of all diabetes cases among youth. So presently, 55% of cases are type 1 diabetes and 45% of cases are type 2 diabetes. So while it is on the rise, still type 1 diabetes is more common among youth than type 2. Additionally, type 2 diabetes occurs in youth more often during the second decade of life. It's important to realize this. I mean, you guys went on to discuss how it really is a really big issue among youth now, but my counter argument is that this problem more so occurs in the second decade. And it's also important to note that 75% of type 2 diabetes cases among youth have a first or second degree relative affected by the disease. So that being said, it would be unfair to take away junk food from all the kids when the vast majority of kids with type 2 diabetes contracted it because they were pre-exposed to the condition due to the fact that genetics plays a major role and not necessarily their poor food choices in vending machines. And this also leads to my next point. Junk food is not the only cause of obesity. According to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, causes of obesity also heavily depend upon one's environment, genes and family history, active or inactive lifestyle, other health conditions, medicines, and lack of sleep, among other things. So banning junk food in school vending machines in order to greatly reduce obesity, as you guys said, is impractical because there are so many underlying reasons for obesity.
Hey, Alyssa, thanks for your feedback and your input. I see what you're saying, and I do respect your opinion, but I also think that I'd have to disagree because I still think that preventing schools from selling junk food has both short-term and long-term effects of promoting healthy choices for students. I think that by creating a ban on selling junk food and removing unhealthy choices from the school environment, schools are more or less able to limit students' food options, and that can encourage them to make immediate, healthier choices. I also think that the short-term effects of banning junk food is that students will just not have access to poor food options. I think that according to Scholastic magazine, which is a magazine that most of us are pretty familiar with, children spend most of their time in school anyway. And it's there that they lay the foundation for either poor or healthy eating habits. A junk food ban could very well be an immediate and short-term positive step towards promoting good nutrition and healthy eating habits in young kids. On the other hand, even though that we can kind of see that there are short-term effects, there are also long-term effects too. I think that when students are placed in a positive eating environment, this can promote healthy eating habits, and this could have a positive influence on them and encourage them to make more long-term, better lifestyle changes in their life. I think that this can make a tremendous difference in the lives of these young people who might be prone to developing obesity later on in their life. And I think that this kind of can address the point that you made earlier, Alyssa, about how obesity can kind of develop later on in the second decade of your life. I think that if better food is sold at school, students do have a higher likelihood of improving their diets either way, and that could very well be just while they're in school. Schools can make a positive impact, I think, and by paying attention to the types of food that we sell at institutions, we as a society can basically take larger strides in improving the overall long-term and short-term effects of the health of our youth.
Although this ban may promote healthy choices in school currently, obesity is too great a problem to manage with this one single practice, as the student's home life affects their health a great deal more. Although banning junk food in schools will help children make healthier decisions while in school, once they leave school, they have the choice to eat whatever they want or whatever their parents allow them to have. In a study recorded in the Journal of Nutrition, Education, and Behavior, it was found that more than half of the children studied had consumed fast food at least once in a week. That being said, it is unlikely that the banning of junk food in a child's life for about 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, will have any major long-term health benefits or significantly improve obesity rates in America. Also, food choice is not the only factor that affects children's health. Such a ban would do nothing if the students are inactive for most of the day. According to the same study in the Journal of Nutrition, Education, and Behavior, media equipment at home, and specifically in the bedroom, is positively correlated with children's sedentary behavior. It was also found that 41% of children studied had no exercise or active media available at home. This would clearly be a large factor unaddressed by a ban on junk food in school.
Thank you for your response, Katie. Yes, children's eating habits at home are important, but I still think junk food should be banned in schools because as learning institutions held accountable for these children under their care daily, they should also be responsible for making decisions that are best for them, including those that pertain to their general well-being. The National Association of State Boards of Education has written, "Health and success in school are interrelated." Schools cannot achieve their primary mission of education if students and staff are not healthy and fit physically, mentally, and socially. Young students' performances in school are affected by their poor eating habits. The food they eat influences their participation in the classroom and often negatively affects their ability to learn and retain information. In addition, by banning junk food, schools make a conscious effort to promote active learning in their classrooms. Schools have the right to design their own menus or lunch menus, as long as they are within reason and appropriate. It is within their own jurisdiction to dictate which foods are served. By banning junk food, schools still maintain their own authority without overstepping government limitations and do so with students' health and benefits in mind.
I definitely see what you're saying, Kiana, when you say that schools have the responsibility to look out for the health of students. But I also firmly believe that such a ban infringes upon the freedom for parents and children to make food choices for their own benefit. So it's really important to note that food choice is an essential right, and removing junk food from schools could be deemed as a violation of parents' right to regulate the diets of their children. We see this over the years. Certain laws and policies have been put in place to ensure that students are being fed meals in accordance with their dietary restrictions and preferences. So for example, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, has actually outlined how the Americans with Disabilities Act protects students' special dietary needs by requiring schools to reasonably accommodate, is the terminology that they use, these students' dietary needs. So for example, gluten-free, dairy-free, and peanut-free options. Similarly to this, the free exercise clause of the First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of religious choice, has been further interpreted to require schools to also reasonably accommodate students who have dietary restrictions for their religious choices. So for example, students who can't eat meat or pork or only kosher, etc. In order to comply with students' and parents' rights, many schools have come up with policies that provide a framework for parents to notify and request dietary accommodations from the school. So therefore, schools are required under various policies, as we've seen, to provide food that complies with students' and parents' dietary requests. So that being said, after those two examples, if parents want chips, candy, soda, and other sugary or fattening items to be available for kids at schools, then the schools should comply with and accommodate these dietary choices made by parents for their kids. Additionally, parents may also take a stand against restriction of their choices once junk food is banned in schools. So according to the New York Times, after banning junk food in a school in Texas, we saw that parents actually lashed out after cupcakes were not allowed to be brought to birthday celebrations. They interviewed the parents, and one parent, I have a quote here from them. She said, "Cupcakes hold strong as a symbol of childhood innocence and parental love." So parents find that banning junk food entirely is immoral and takes the fun out of childhood memories like celebrations. The parents in Texas even lobbied to get a safe cupcake amendment added to the state's nutrition policy. So the amendment that they came up with, which was indeed passed, ensures that the parents may bring frosted treats to their school celebrations. So this example that I just said clearly displays parental disagreement in response to a junk food ban, and also shows that parents ultimately have the greatest say in what their children can and cannot eat during school. So I see that you guys are arguing about how the schools should have the responsibility and take on that responsibility to determine what kids should and should not be putting in their bodies, but ultimately from my examples we see that it's the parents who have the final say.
We have had a good discussion today on the topic of the ban of the sale of junk foods in school, and we're able to find arguments both for and against this proposed solution to health problems currently facing Americans. Some of the pros we have discussed include reducing obesity levels in the U.S., building healthy eating habits earlier in life that hopefully last through adulthood, and enforcing the responsibility of school systems as caretakers of students. The cons, however, include the impracticality of removing junk food from everyone just for the benefit of a small percentage, obesity being too large an issue to be improved by this one act, and the fact that the ban infringes upon the essential right for parents and children to make food choices for their own benefit, which can result in feelings of resentment. We do agree that in nationwide conversations about banning junk food, all of these points should be taken into account and discussed thoroughly before making an informed decision. As you review these pros and cons we have discussed today, reconsider our question. How would you feel if after the entire day of imagining the salty, crispy Doritos you've been longing to have after Algebra 2, you were told that you could not have your favorite snack?